Okay. Well, I should probably start back a bit in my background. The one thing that was really shaped a lot of who I was the fact I stuttered so bad. And of course I didn't want to stutter. And when you're a teenager, you certainly don't want to stutter. And one of the things with our church is they believe in healing. And when I was probably about 12, 13 years old, we had an evangelist come. Really could speak, just really great. Well, he said, well, when I was a kid, I stuttered, and I prayed and I was healed. So I figured, well, that's a great idea, so I'll try that. And it didn't happen. A couple years later, I'm not sure if it's the same guy come back. I don't think it was. I think it was another guy. And he had the same experience. So I tried again, and it didn't happen. So, and that way I got a little bit discouraged. I still believed in healing and everything, but I couldn't understand. Well, I figured I wasn't good enough. I didn't have enough faith to be healed, because if you have enough faith to get healed. And that's about this. Okay, well then, I'll skip on to, I went in high school. Well, because I stuttered, I tried to excel in everything else. We didn't have to talk. So I tried to be the top in everything. It didn't require any talking. And so then, when we graduated, we went off to engineering school. And that was the time when everybody should be an engineer, because of the space program, and the Russians had set up Sputnik, and what are we going to do about it? So we all went off to engineering school. So I was there for 2 quarters, and it was okay. But it wasn't very challenging.
That was like 1955?
That would be 1955.
Okay.
And plus it was, in those years in engineering schools, only guys, so we had 1,000 guys and maybe 3 or 4 girls. And I was used to having some females around and doing stuff with them. And there wasn't anything, I had very good study habits. So I studied, well, I played football in the fall. And so I studied as soon as I got home and got all my stuff done. So when the winter time come, I'd study and I'd get all my stuff done, and be after supper. I wouldn't have anything to do. But they had 3 movie theaters downtown. One was kind of the first run, and the other was the B. And then the other one was you could get all kinds of cowboy and Indian movies. It cost $0.25 to watch for 4 hours. And the Indians came, and the Flyboys came. And that was kind of interesting because some of the cowboy and Indian ones, the Indians would be cheering for the Indians, cheering for the cowboys. But anyway. Oh, and then all 3 of them switched 2 times a week. So you could essentially go to, every night almost, you could go to a movie, which I went to a lot of movies because it just didn't have anything. So I got kind of bored with that, and what I liked to do really was to draw. And so after 2 quarters, I told my folks I didn't want to go back to school. I mean, I wasn't having any trouble with the studies, but it just was way too boring, and I wanted to be back in Watertown, where there were people I knew, and young ladies still in the high school who I knew, and and so on. So I got a job as an engineering company, and was really happy as a draftsman. So that went along in the spring, summer, same thing. and then in the fall, it was the first part of October, we had another preacher came by, and I kind of caught the idea that you needed to let the Holy Spirit have control of your life. So I thought, okay, I think that's true. I'm trying to figure out everything, and not asking the Lord what I should be doing. And so I started on that path, and I prayed. It was about a 3-week period there that I was struggling. Do I want to have the Lord have control of this part of my life? Okay. And then, well, then how about this part? Okay. So it took a while, but I think at the end of the 3 weeks, essentially I was asking the Lord about most everything. And it's about then he kind of said, well, I think you should go back to school, which I didn't really think I should that much. But at the same time, my best friend Everett, Cariff, he was out of School of Mines, and there was a new physics professor, and he told the physics professor about me, and he thought I should be in school. And the physics professor said, well, what do you think we could do? And so he asked me if I were to come back to school, how could things change? I said, well, one of the things I'd want to catch up with you guys, which meant taking 3 quarters of mathematics all at the same time. I'd have to take integrated calculus, Calc 1 and Calc 2 all at the same time. And the physics professor said, well, we should have him try it. And so he talked to the math department, and they said, no way, you can't do that. That's really stupid. But he argued, well, if you don't allow him to try, he isn't going to come back anyway, so you haven't lost anything. So they finally agreed to let me try. So I did, and first, at the beginning, the Calc 2 was kind of hard, but my friends taught me, in the first couple of weeks, they taught me all about Calculus 1. So after about 2 weeks, I was kind of caught up with the Calc 2. So anyway, then the second, or the spring semester, this physics professor, well, he wanted me to be a physics major. I didn't like to do lab stuff, and he says, well, you can do the theoretical physics, and you don't have to do any lab stuff. And so, okay, it's all mathematics. So that was great. Well, by the way, I forgot to mention here, after when I wanted the Holy Spirit to be in control, I thought, aha, now I won't stutter anymore. I still did. Okay, well then, during that spring semester, he found this job for me with Remington Rand Univac, and it was working on a brand new project that they were doing. They had a team of maybe 6 or 7 engineers, and then some technicians and stuff. And anyway, it's a really, really good job. And he had some influence with somebody, and said, why don't you hire this guy over summer? So they did. They kind of gave me a job over summer. So off I went to St. Paul. And now I grew up in Watertown. And our church there, the youth group, was about 3, 4, 5 people maybe. And the only girl in it happened to be the pastor's daughter, who I didn't really particularly care for. And so, all my friends, I didn't have any friends who were from the church at all. I had a lot of friends, but I didn't have any from the church. Well, I got St. Paul, and I went to this Simpson Memorial Church, which was a fairly large church. And so I went to youth group. First youth group, there were 30 people my
Wow.
age, and probably 23 of them were females.
Jackpot.
Whoa, this is great. So I really enjoy that aspect of my son too. It's about, and I went with several of them. And it was about towards the first of August, no, when I first got there, well, Shirley was there right when I first got there. But then she had to go with her mom and dad back to Canada for about a month. And so she wasn't there, so I was there, and I didn't know too much about her. Well, when she got back, they would have a Sunday evening sing thing at the park. And so I went to this, and we had a couple, and she and her girlfriend needed to have a ride, and so we took them along. Oh, and I was going with this other girl, and she said, well, why don't you give them a ride too? So I said, okay. And so when we were singing, I was standing by Shirley, and I noticed she could really sing alto, really neat, and I could harmonize. And so she attracted my attention then. And just a couple weeks later, well, this girl who I was kind of going with, she said, well, I need to go home now, and you need to take me home. And I didn't particularly want to leave them. I said, well, no, you can find a ride with somebody else. I don't have to take you home. And so she was kind of put out about that because she thought she should be boss, I guess. Anyway, after a couple of weeks, we, Shirley and her friend asked my roommate and I if we would want to come over for supper. Well, actually, her girlfriend was going with my roommate, kind of. And so they didn't want to ask just Roger alone. So they said, well, I might as well have him come along too. So we did that, and we went over there a couple of evenings and had a good time. And then we went out to this park to go hiking, and in St. Paul, so we drove out the park, and the other couple went off, and I said, well, let's walk up the trail here, and so on. So we did, and we went up a ways, and then coming back down, I had to hold her hand, help her down. I'm sure she was quite capable,
Really?
But anyway, that was a good excuse. Well, then we spent some more time out with each other, and I really enjoyed her company. And I remember we would, they lived on a second floor apartment and had a balcony out the back, and we would drink a porch, and they had we would drink tea and so on, and then we would go out and stand on the porch and talk. And I mean, this first time she had her hand on the railing, and I kind of put my hand over by it, and she didn't hold back. So then I kind of lifted my little finger over. She didn't jump right there. Oh, that's pretty nice. So I was becoming interested in her, and then she told me she was going to go back to Omaha in September because she was gonna go back to school in Omaha. And you hear all these girls here, and I liked her kind of, but I thought, I don't want to get any more romantically attached, because when you go back to Omaha, I don't want to have to feel like I can't go with other people, you know. So I don't want to correspond with somebody in Omaha when there's already a whole bunch of girls right here that I can get to know. And so she had a really great suggestion. She said, well, okay, that's okay, but I have 1 week to go. She says, why don't we just have a whole lot of fun in the next week, go out every night, you know, and do things, and then when the week's up, it's over and that's it. I said, oh, that sounds okay to me. I'm all for having more fun, just as long as there aren't any strings attached at the end of it. So anyway, we did that, and so the 1st September came and she went off to Omaha, and I continued to find some other young ladies at the church that were interesting and so on. But I didn't go out with them too long, because I asked the kind of questions I was interested in knowing how they felt about things, you know, and I could tell before too long, well, I don't think we're quite on the same page here, and so on. But meanwhile, Shirley, we said we wouldn't correspond, but she very wisely got a math joke from her math professor and wrote it on a piece of paper and sent it to her friend and said, here, give this to Jake, he might like it. So she didn't actually correspond.
Right.
But then she also put her address on the back of it.
You didn't write the rules, but you broke the rules.
So
It worked.
So anyway, I looked at the joke and I saw the address on the back, so I folded it up and stuck it in my billfold, just, you know, who knows who might want it. Oh, and I hadn't gone back to South Dakota School of Mines in the fall, because I decided I didn't want to be a physicist, and I think the Lord was asking me to be a teacher and teach math. And I wanted to do math, but they didn't have any math out at the School of Mines. So my friend Effort again, he discovered they're going to have a math major. So he wrote and told me, hey, we're going to have a math major here. So I thought, oh, that sounds, I'd go back out there then if they're going to have a math major. So, and so then for the 3rd quarter of that year, the spring quarter, I went back out to School of Mines, and I was going to be a math major. And that was good. I enjoyed that. Well, I'd been there about 2 weeks. I started, again, we're out in Rapid City, you know. Now there aren't any girls around at all. And so I thought of the people I had known, and I realized, well, Shirley was the one that I really had fun with. And but she's probably going with somebody now. She's down in Omaha. There's a big Air Force base on the edge.
That's right, the Air Force base there too, wasn't it?
Yeah, yeah. So I wrote to her, and I wanted to find out these things, but I didn't want to be too vulnerable. So I phrased it like, well, I suppose you found a boyfriend by now, and you know, that's all I wrote. Well, she got the letter, and she was very, very proper about not being too much of in a hurry to answer it. So she let it set for
Couple
a
days.
few, yeah. And of course, in those days, it takes a couple of days for the letters to get there, a couple more days. So it was probably a week later, and I heard back from her. And she said, well, I'm working a lot at the supermarket, and I know a couple guys in church, but I'm not particularly going with anybody in particular. And she said, but I am going to be up in St. Paul at Easter time. And that was probably about a week and a half away from when I got the letter. And so I thought, when and she mentioned maybe you could come up to St. Paul then. And I thought, well, that sounds promising. So I wrote back and said, yeah, I could come up to St. Paul. I'd like to do that. Now, for all of the young people who don't remember what things were like that, you didn't have cell phones and so on. If you called, said, why didn't you call and find out? You didn't call. A call would cost probably about $1, $1.50 or so, and that's when the loaf of only 15 cents.
She wasn't
So
worth
nobody used any phone. So I sent the letter back, and she got the letter and opened it up, and I said, well, I could go up there if I said, if you would like to have me. And so she answered, said, yeah, by all means. So she had her stepfather drive her to the airport, in fact, and they handed the letter to the...
Actually, it's my mother.
Oh, your mother drove you out there?
Yeah.
Okay. And so anyway, now the letter was on its way back.
But it actually was then airmail, right? That was the whole point of.
Right.
That seems like a strange concept, I think, too, for my generation of this airmail thing. She went to the airport and
Yeah.
said,
It was
Yeah.
faster
Yeah.
if you actually
Yeah.
went to the airport.
okay,
Then they had to go through the post office.
all right.
It's a good thing she did. And so anyway, it was off now. She doesn't know if I'll get in time or not. So I'm back in Rapid City, and I'm gonna know what my plans are. I had an 8 o'clock class on Friday, be done at 9 o'clock. I go back to my, where I stayed, picked up some stuff, and start from home about 9:30, because it was 400 miles, and that's before they had the 4 lanes and stuff. So it was a 9 or 10 hour trip, to get back. So I was going to go home. So anyway, Thursday, no letter, and so I thought, oh, yeah, I don't know, this probably isn't going to work out. And now we stayed in a place where the mailman was very, very punctual. You could tell the time or you could tell what time it was by when he came. He always came between 10:15 and 10:30. Never any earlier, never any later, always the same time. Well, I was going to come home and be there about 9:30. So anyway, I drove home, and I came in the door, and the lady at the house said, "The mailman came early, and there's the letter for you." So, and that was a miracle that happened. I got the letter. So I ripped it open. She said, "Yeah, come on up to St. Paul." So I said, and again, of course, I couldn't call her and say, "Okay, I will."
Right.
So she wasn't sure if I ever got the letter, and so then I decided I'd go up to St. Paul. And now my folks were kind of planning to have me. Okay, you had Easter vacation, which was Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. And so I started out for home. I got home late Friday night. And I said, oh, by the way, I'm going to go up to St. Paul on Sunday. So I'll be leaving real early on Sunday morning. And I won't be back till Monday afternoon, and then I'll have to go back to school. So all their plans and
Right.
having me home didn't work out very good for them. But, so anyway, I started out for St. Paul early on Sunday morning, and I got there about 11:15. Church was at 11. Now, should I tell your side, or do you want to?
You want me to
Yeah.
tell my side?
Yeah.
Well, of course, I had no idea if he was going to be there or not. But I did have a friend who lived about 3 houses away from the church, and I had made arrangements to stay with her. So I took the bus. I was on the bus all night and got there in the morning and got off the bus, the street, about a block away from where I was going to go. And I called her, no answer. So I thought, well, I'll go to her apartment, knock on the door. She went home. So I did know that the pastor of the church lived across the street, and that's where the parsonage was. And I got in touch with him and asked if I could stay there. And I just thought, well, I'll just go there for now, because I needed to change clothes to go to church. I mean, this is Easter Sunday. And so I he said, sure, come on. And they gave me the really nice guest room and everything. And so I went over and went to Sunday school, but no Dick. That's what he went by Dick
Oh,
in
okay.
those days. And
Well, that's what they called it,
that's what we called it.
because Francis.
Okay, that's what I
Maybe
knew
that
it
from
as.
Watertown,
Yeah. And
Oh, there's somebody from your hometown that had
Who
you.
lived
yeah,
there,
she
yeah,
lived down the
yeah,
street.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
Francis Polk.
yeah. And so I went to Sunday school and he wasn't there. And I thought, oh well, you know. And came up the stairs from Sunday school. It was in the basement. Came up the stairs, and there he was, just inside the door. It's like, wow. So that was really neat.
So then, well, now she was there basically to go to a wedding on
In
Sunday
Wisconsin.
evening, just across the river in Wisconsin.
Okay.
So we spent Sunday afternoon together and so on, and then I drove her over to the wedding, and I waited outdoors in the car and so on while she
And I didn't even go to the reception
All right.
because he was waiting in the car.
Did you crack the window for him so he could breathe?
So anyway, I told her, well, I can stay till about 4 o'clock because I had a job in Rapid City. I was cleaning an office, and I could, if I started at 6 a.m., I could get the office all cleaned by 7:30, and then I could go to my classes. So I'd be back in Rapid City by 6 a.m. So I figured, well, Watertown, that was 200 miles, that's 5 hours, and then it's about another 9 hours out to Rapid City. So that's 14 hours. So if I leave at St. Paul at 4, I'll get to Rapid City about 6.
Oh my.
Well, we
goodness.
gained an hour or two because, you know, I had some fudge time. So anyway, I told her I'd have to be back by, or I could stay till 4. And so that was good. So we went to a park, and
Daddy
well,
went
that's
with
when
us.
I didn't eat anything, was it?
Yeah.
I was being very conservative because I didn't have any money,
Oh.
actually. So she said, well, don't you want to buy something to eat? And I thought, no, I'm fine and so on. But anyway, yeah, then her girlfriend happened to be along with us. Well, she was smart enough to sit off away so we could talk. And, so it was then we decided that we thought we would like to go with each other. And one of the key questions was, well, previous to that, I had felt that the Lord wanted me not only go into math, but to be a math teacher. So I said to her, well, I stutter pretty bad, but I think I'm supposed to be a math teacher. And what do you think about that? And she said, oh, I think that's a good idea. So, good answer. That was the right one. So anyway, we said, okay, we would write to each other every day. And the first couple days are hard because, okay, I drove all the way back out there. I got to my job just in time. I worked. I was done at 7:30, and I went to class by 8 o'clock. Although I'd been up driving for about 14 hours.
Tires me out thinking about it.
I was young, full of energy. Anyway, I was thinking about her all the way back. So time went really fast. And so anyway, after you write these letters, so you write the first one, and you write the second one. It takes a couple days to get there. And meanwhile, you're thinking now, did she really mean she wanted to write? Maybe she changed her mind on the bus ride home. So the third day you write the letter and send it without getting any. Finally, the fourth day, I got the letter back, from her. Yay, she was still interested. So,
or at least she was 3 days before that.
Right. So we,
It's like the speed of light or something, star.
we corresponded back and forth. That was probably about the first part of April. And so we wrote back and forth. About the third week in April, I decided this writing back and forth isn't really that good. I'd really like to see her. So I decided I needed to give myself a vacation. So I decided I would leave
Priorities.
Tuesday after school, drive to Omaha, which is it was 600 miles, so that's about a 14, 15-hour drive, and stay there until the following Tuesday and then come back to school. And I was doing okay in my classes, so I decided I deserved a vacation. So anyway, that's what I did. And I drove all night. I got to her house about 6 o'clock in the morning, and I parked out in front because I wanted to get some sleep because I didn't think anyone was up yet. Anyway, her mom saw that I was out there, and she told her that, oh, there's a little car.
There's a little car out there, and there's a person sitting in it.
That's great. So anyway, we had a good time that week. She went to classes, and I hung around until she was out. That was
I went to
that
work
was really
too.
good. That's right. Yeah, you had to go to work.
You sat in your car a lot.
No, I walked around, and so I parked the car and I'd walk the neighborhoods.
See
all this stuff, yeah. So, and then on Sunday, of course, I went to church with them. Now, my wardrobe was blue jeans and flannel shirts, which I think I had 3 flannel shirts. But I had this really good flannel shirt for Sunday, so I brought that along to wear to church. So Sunday morning we were going to church. Now they went to a real snazzy church downtown where the wealthy people went, and they all dressed up and everything. So on Sunday morning I come down with my best flannel shirt on, and her folks were not really impressed with the country bumpkin she But we didn't sit with them in church, so I guess they didn't have to acknowledge that they knew anything about us. But anyway, so I went back out to school. When I got back to school, I discovered that my mechanical drawing class, which I had done everything perfectly in up to then, he decided he'd give it the final exam while I was gone, without saying anything to any of us.
Oh, no.
So I got back, and my friend said, "We had the final while you were gone." I said, "Oh, okay. Well, I need to talk to him." So I went and talked to him. I said, "I wasn't here for the final." He said, "I know. What happened?" I said, "Well, I was out in Omaha and visiting my girlfriend." He said, "Oh, well, that's unfortunate." So that was it. I didn't get to take the final. But my grades were such that when you averaged them all in, I think I had a B for the course. Anyway, we had to go a couple more weeks. Well, then I got the same job up in St. Paul. I got that job back again. So I said to Shirley, "Well, I'm going to be up in St. Paul over the summer. How about you coming up there? You can stay in the Bible school and find a job somewhere," and so on. So she said, "Yeah, okay, I'll do that." So I said, "Okay, when school's out, I'll stop in Omaha. I'll pick you up. We'll drive up to Watertown so I can introduce you to my folks, and we'll be there for a day or two." And we were probably maybe there 2 days.
I think so.
And then we go out to St. Paul. So when school was out, I had to pick her up. Now my final exam schedule was on a Friday morning. I had my last exam, 2-hour exam, started at 8 o'clock and went until 10, and then I was going to start out. But it was in mechanical engineering. And so I added up all the points I had, and I knew that 75% he gave a C to. And my total points, if I just had 5 more points, I'd get 75%. So he handed out this 2-hour exam. So I grabbed the exam, and I paged through and found a nice 5-point question I could answer. Answered the question, and so he handed out the exam, got up the front of the room, and there I was with the exam. He says, "Is there something wrong?" I said, No. I said, "I just have to have 5 points in order to have a 75% average," and I answered a 5-point question, so I'm off to Omaha. And I always want to tell my students that, the grades just aren't that important. More important.
Oh, that's great.
If you do enough.
You can see him shaking his head as you walk out.
Really?
And all the other students like, wait, where's Dick going?
Really?
I was
Oh, you're Jake by then.
I was Jake out school when I was there. Yeah.
What happened to Jake?
How'd you become
kicked out?
Jake?
Oh, I became Jake when I was in the 7th grade. My football coach, he was a friend of my dad's, or he knew my dad anyway. And one of the nicknames they called him, happened to be Jake, they called him Jake and Doc and Heine and Henry and so on, but one name they called him was Jake, so he started calling me Jake. So all the other kids caught on and started calling me
okay.
Jake, and so, and by the time I graduated from high school, I was Jake to everybody.
Except for
Except
what's
my
her name?
mom's friends.
Francis.
who-
Except for Francis.
Yeah, right, and she had left when I was about in the 8th or 9th
Oh,
grade.
okay. All right.
Yeah. Well, all of my mom's friends, I was still Dick or Dickie. So anyway, I went down and got Shirley. We went up to Watertown. I introduced her to my folks, and they liked her. Just without
Passed the test.
yeah. And so then we went up St. Paul. That was about the first week in June, I think, when we got there. And so I started my job. And in the evenings, I'd pick her up and we'd go out to this, it was a hamburger stand. It was the precursor for McDonald's, except you would order in your car and drive. It was a drive-in place. And
The
we would have
waitress,
our burgers.
waiters and waitresses came out to the car.
Okay.
Like Sonic.
On roller skates?
Yeah, like Sonic would be, but not on roller skates.
No.
That was probably only a few places, but when it went down that's what happened at all of them.
Right.
Yeah. So anyway, I think the second week we were there, I said to her, "Okay, I wanna ask you a question, but I want you to think about it before you answer." So she said, "Okay." So I said, "Well, I'm wondering if you'd marry me." And when I answered that, she thought,
I would have
You did-
said yes right there. But he said, well, why don't you think about it? Let me know.
"I'll
So
ask you again tomorrow. I'll give you a day to think about
I've
it."
been thinking about it for a couple months.
Did you hear that question coming when he said, "I've got a question to ask you"?
I don't know. I don't remember that part. I probably was hoping that's what the question was.
So you didn't feel like you needed the time, but you figured if he wanted you to think about it, you...
I didn't need any time.
So anyway, she said yes. And now my first idea was, well, how about in 2 weeks we could get married? She said, no, everybody think we have to get married. You know, I want to
People
be
in that
able to.
church would be sure that was why we were there. Because we had to.
And then you wouldn't have ever been born.
Right. So then,
That's funny.
so she said, no, I want an engagement ring so I can show them that we're
Yeah, sure are engaged.
later on. So I said, okay, well, how about the end of August, just before we go back out to school? She said, yeah, that'd work. That'd be okay. So we went and found her ring. What was it, $150 or something?
I don't know, but we went together
Yeah.
and we looked at rings in the jewelry store
Yeah.
and found what we wanted right there. But it had to be sized, so I had to go back. We had to go back later and get it.
Anyway, we were all set then. Oh, and now that was on a Saturday night. We called my folks. They were quite happy. It was one time we did use the phone. Her mom happened to be in Canada visiting her sisters, but she was going to come through on the bus, and she was going to stop in St. Paul early on Sunday morning. And Shirley said she'd stop for the bus station and meet her at the bus station. So we get there, And she gets in the car, and Shirley says, "Guess what? We're gonna get married." And her mom said, "No, you can't do that." And I'm sitting there like, because well, she had planned for Shirley to come back in the fall, and they would do things together again. While
We had
Shirley
had 1 year
works at-
together while I went to
School.
the University of Omaha.
Yeah.
And she was looking forward to another year like that. We had a lot of good times. Sometimes she would meet me at the bus downtown in Omaha, and we'd do some shopping together, and so we had a lot of good times. So it wasn't that she didn't want me to get married, she just wanted me to stay around.
Yeah,
Which is sort of nice.
Yeah.
yeah.
So anyway, that was kind of a rough hurdle there for a little while in the car.
A little quiet.
Yeah, a little quiet.
Awkward.
So, well, anyway, the summer went by, and she went home 2 weeks beforehand to get her dress made and stuff like that.
My mother was wonderfully cooperative. She made my dress at the last minute, and she let me make a lot of arrangements in that last 2 weeks. It was amazing.
That's
She was
good.
really good.
So anyway, we got married on a Friday evening in Omaha. Oh, and then the pastor who she stayed with on that
Yeah.
early that year, he was the one who married us.
Oh,
He
okay.
drove down from St. Paul
Oh,
to
cool.
Omaha and
That's nice.
married
Well,
us.
that's great.
Who was that? What was his name?
Mason,
Mason,
Esther Mason?
Culver Mason.
Culver Mason.
Culver Mason?
Culver, we used to call him Clover Mason.
Culver
Culver Mason, yeah.
So the pastor was there from the beginning.
Yes,
Yeah,
he
right.
was.
That's cool.
And it was,
Right.
it was very good of him to drive down there.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
So did Grandma and Grandpa
So-
Jacobson drive out to Omaha?
Yeah, they came down to Omaha. Yeah, they came down a couple days early, and they
And
had
Margaret
the-
was in the wedding.
Oh,
the
okay.
She was one of the
parade,
bridesmaids.
yeah. And they had the banquet beforehand. My dad paid for the banquet or something.
Yeah.
Was your stepsister the maid of honor, or?
No,
She was.
no, they weren't.
Okay, I didn't know if she was.
She was moved too far away.
Oh, okay.
They weren't in Omaha anymore.
So anyway, we got married on Friday night and took off for Rapid City. And we got, again, that's a good 12, 13 hours in the long run. So Saturday we basically drove out there. And Sunday morning we got to Rapid City. Now I had gotten us a place to stay. I had some, I knew a young couple, and she was going on sabbatical that year. She was a school teacher, and she'd said, yeah, we could stay in their place. So we had a place to go. So we got there on Sunday, unpacked our car. Oh, and now we had this little Nash Crander, which is kind of like a two-door
Okay.
hatchback.
Okay.
Well, everything we had was in there.
Wow.
So we got there and unpacked, and, which didn't take too awfully long, and got the house set up, and we decided, of course, that we're going to have to find some way of earning some money. School didn't start till the following Monday. I had to register on Thursday. So on Monday morning, we decided, I left her off at the employment agency, and then I went downtown, and there was an there was an engineering firm there. And of course, when I dropped out of school, I had worked for the one in Watertown, and I'd done well with them, so went there and I said, "Do you suppose I could have a part-time job in the afternoons as a draftsman?" And he called the guy in Watertown. I guess, and he said, "Well, I want you to show me what you can do." So he took me out in the other room and set me up with something and said, "You're going to work on that." And then he went back, and I imagine he called the guy in Watertown. He said, "Yeah, I'd be a good employee." So anyway, he came back pretty soon and said, "Yeah, you can work in the afternoons." It wasn't all afternoon, every afternoon, because I was going to school some, but it was a good, I think about maybe 20 hours a week. And he started me out at $1.10 an hour. And so, it's great. Of course, you don't have text, so I can't text her and tell her the job we had previously agreed to meet, or I would pick her up at the employment agency, and then we'd go out for lunch. So at noontime I was down there, and she came out and said, "Guess what? I got a job." And so she'd gone to this insurance company, and she'd worked for one up in St. Paul, and so she was qualified for a job there. And so we both had jobs by lunchtime. And so we said, "Well, we didn't really go on any honeymoon or anything. How about having our honeymoon now? We're in the Black Hills." So on Tuesday and Wednesday we went out hiking out in the hills and saw some good stuff. I took her to some good places there. One spot where the river is flowing along, all of a sudden dries up and there isn't anything there. And then you walk for another probably 3/4 of a mile, and it comes gurgling onto the ground into a nice big pool. Really neat, and a high cliff up above. But it's way away from where anyone would go. I forget how
Well, there was a path.
Yeah, but
But had you been
it
there
wasn't
before?
advertised. Yeah, I knew about it.
It wasn't
So I
one
wanted
where
to
a lot of
show it.
tourists were.
Yeah, I wanted to show it to her. So anyway, that was Tuesday and Wednesday. Well, Thursday she went off to work, and I was supposed to go to school and register for my classes. So I went over to school, and there's long steps that go up to the administration building, and that's where you register and so on. So I was walking up the steps. Down the steps come the head of the math department. He said, "Oh, I'm glad I see you. I've been wanting to talk to you." He said, "We have more students this fall than we were expecting, and I need a couple more teachers. Would you be willing to teach?" So I said, "Yeah, that'd be great."
He's a junior.
Because, yeah, not even quite.
It's so
Just
weird.
I had 5 quarters actually. Well, see, he knew I took those 3 math
right.
courses at the same time, and then I had taken the course from him, and he was a very friendly guy. Of course, I
Wow.
was friendly.
Is that Papa?
Yeah, Pop March. And
Obviously a friendly guy, you called him Pop.
Yeah.
so
That's cool.
So anyway, he said, "Yeah," and he said, "Okay, start on Monday morning." So here's where your class will be. So I started in. So I was taking my own courses, and I was teaching this course. Yeah,
What
about
were you
25 guys, huh?
What were you teaching?
Well, beginning calculus, and then you started the first quarter. You had algebra 2. The second quarter you had trigonometry, and the third quarter you had pre-calc in your first year. In the second year you take calc 1. So I started out with the first ones
With algebra?
so, with the algebra 2 course.
Oh, okay.
And then in the winter I taught the trig, and the next I taught
And he never said a thing about stuttering or anything like that.
No,
That's cool.
and he knew I stuttered.
Yeah.
So yeah, the Lord just really worked that out. It wasn't anything my doing. We were, so when I come home and told Shirley now, okay, my other job, my part-time job, I was making a little over $1 an hour for 20 hours. We make about $20 a week,
Mhm.
and I was paid $300 a month to
Oh.
teach.
Wow.
So wow, we ever get a big boost in salary there.
Yeah.
So then I did okay. I knew a couple times I glanced over at the door and I saw him. He was standing outside the door, listening to see how I was doing. But my students all enjoyed me and they liked me, so I think I had that. He would ask the students I know, okay, is he doing okay, and so on and so forth. In fact,
That's cool.
before long, a lot of them, the second quarter, they wanted to switch to my classes. They had. So, anyway, that was a successful thing, and then during my senior year, I got to do the same thing. I taught every time. And then, now after my senior year, of course, you would want to go into graduate school somewhere, and they were going to start a graduate program in mathematics. So they said, well, why don't you stay here, and we'll take you on as a full-time instructor instead of just a graduate fellowship sort of thing. So then our wages really went up. So I got to be an instructor, and went on to graduate school. And see, now that first summer in July, Rob was born, and then we went the next year, and then the next year in March, Steve came along. So that was his second year of my graduate work. You were born. And so then of course I had to be thinking, okay, now when I finish this out, I'm going to have to find a job teaching somewhere. And I knew the Lord wanted me teaching somewhere, so I found the names of all these smaller colleges, maybe 1,000, 1,200 people, and I grew up in Watertown where it was flat prairie, and so I wanted to be in the mountains or by a lake or by the woods. So we applied to schools in Vermont, Michigan, Minnesota, 3 or 4, in Colorado, up in the mountains. And so I sent out all my applications, was sitting there waiting for them to answer me back. Oh, I got the names of the schools from a brochure which they send out, here's math positions available. And so they all had positions available. So I wrote back and said, yeah, we like your credentials, we'll keep in touch with you. So I'm expecting in the next couple of days to hear from one of them, come home and ask Shirley, you getting mail today? No. So I said, well.
Probably my mother wrote.
Right. The Lord will take care of us, Okay. So then I'd get all enthused again. Okay, I'll be fine. Next day I come home. Now at the same time, these people I had worked with at Remington Rand Univert back at a little collection of engineers had decided to leave Remington Rand and make these solid state computers on their own. So they started what was called Controlled Data Corporation. And the guy who I worked under, the next under, he knew I was going to graduate, so he wrote out and he said, why don't you come and work for us? And I said, well, I could think about it. He said, we'll fly you up here and show you around and fly you back. And
That was to Minneapolis.
yeah, to Minneapolis. So I said, okay. So they flew me up there, took me out to their headquarters, their offices. By then they'd grown to probably maybe 25 or 30 employees, but doing just really well and just hiring more people. And so they showed me what they had. And they described 4 different areas I could choose from. So either do this and this and this. They all sounded really interesting. And then before I left, they offered me a job for $33,000 a year. And which is even compute, that'd be like about $250,000 now. Wow. And so anyway, I flew back home, and told Shirley, but we both agreed, well, we really think the Lord wants us in teaching. And so I said, well, I don't have to answer it for a couple of weeks. We'll see if we get an offer then, And so the next day, oh, by the way, to go back to my study, the first day I was going to teach out of school of mine, he asked me if I teach. I thought, here's when the Lord's going to heal me. I'll get to class and I won't study. Didn't happen. So anyway, I got back home and I went off to class. I come home and said, Shirley, now hear from me? No. Hear from me? She finally said, I don't think the Lord's going to send you this as long as you got that other job on the back. You're just hanging on to it, kind of like saying, well, in case you can't find me something, I got something I could do. Because I had the 2 boys and a family. And although I did have a summer job back with the same engineering company in Watertown, so I did have something to do over summer. So I agreed, and I said, yeah, I need to write and tell them that I don't want the job. That I thank you for the nice offer, but I'm going to teach school. And I thought that'd be the end of it. Well, it was almost, except they wrote back and said, oh, that's really good to hear. Where is it you're going to teach? So then I had to write them back and said, well, I don't know yet. I haven't got a job. But anyway, we went. So, went like that till the end of school. And on graduation day, I was going to get my master's. My folks came out, and Margaret, and now we were going to leave after graduation at noontime. So again, we packed up all our belongings. Now this is after we had YouTube, and did we have yeah, we had a car by then.
Yes.
Yeah,
We hadn't had
so
it very long, but we did have a car.
Right.
Not the Nash Rambler anymore?
No.
Oh, yeah, and I'll tell you how that all happened too. But anyway, we had a car, so the 4 of us, and then my mom and dad and Margaret and her friend were in another car. And then we put all of our belongings in the 2 cars plus the 8 people and went off to Watertown. So now I'm amazed when I
Yeah,
see
really.
kids coming to school. They're just them.
Yeah,
And they sometimes have to have a U-Haul.
right.
So yeah, we packed it all up and we're all set to go to Watertown. Well, that morning when I got there, my head math advisor said to me, I just got a call this morning from South Dakota State College, and they have an opening and wondered if you might to be interested in it. So why don't you call them as soon as graduation is done? So I said, okay. So I called them up and I said, well, I'm going to be in Watertown. They said, well, how about coming down next Friday afternoon and talking with us and we'll show you. And so, yeah, so because I didn't have anything else, I might as well say okay. Well, and the other thing about the Brookings, South Dakota, is that was a state school, and so it had agriculture, was agriculture, engineering, and the university had the professions like law and medicine, and all those state schools and the university schools are all designed the same. So your state, like Kansas State, they'll have engineering and agriculture, and Kansas University will have law and medicine. So they're all designed that. So, and that was only 60 miles from Watertown. And they were our prime rivals in all of our high school football sports. And we used to refer to it as the Cow College. And I didn't really plan on teaching at the Cow College. But we said, okay. So next Friday we got in the car and we drove down there and talked to them. They were very friendly. And we talked about the courses and everything, showed me around campus, and he was really a nice guy. And after about 2 hours, he offered me a job, and I said, well, I've got some others I'm kind of thinking about. Could I have 1 week to think about it? He said, yeah, that week we can do that. So I said, okay, I'll let you know the next Friday at noontime. And so we went back to Watertown. Looked, any letters, anybody want me, and I couldn't figure out, because they all seemed fairly interested. And I knew I had good qualifications from or good recommendations from the professors at School of Mines, and they all would have signed the line.
Well, you presented some papers, you said too,
Yeah,
right?
I did. Yeah. Oh, yeah. You know, at the Math Association, they have the Rocky Mountain, where you have Utah, Colorado, a bunch of schools. Yeah, and the last one I presented afterwards, my major professor said, well, several professors came up and said, we didn't know that you had a doctoral program there. He said, no, it's just master's. That was a master's degree. So, yeah, it was okay stuff. So, anyway, so Friday noon, we had decided if we don't hear anything, so the mailman had come in the morning, nothing. So in the afternoon, I signed the contract and sent it off.
Off to the Cow College.
Off to Cow College. Here we were. Now, on Saturday, Sunday, and Monday, the next 3 days, I got 7 offers from those other schools. I had 3 registered letters, 2 telegrams, and 2 phone calls. And those are in the days when telegrams were, if you got a telegram, wow, that's really, really impressive.
And you get a phone call.
Yeah,
long distance.
well, telegram was even more
Even more,
impressive
okay.
than a phone call. But anyway, and so we had to chuckle about that. I think the Lord wants us at Brookings. He was sitting on the desks here,
Really?
holding up all these letters until I sent my contract in, and then he allowed them all to come through. So
That's great.
Wow.
so then I got all those offers and right back. Well, I already have a job now. So then we went down to Brookings, and the first Sunday we went to this Wesleyan church, and we pulled up.
And we had planned to try different churches.
Yeah, we thought
We were
we'd
gonna-
try a couple of them and see how they went. But we pulled up, and out came a couple and their kids, and they said, "Are you the Jacobsons from Rapid City?" And we said, "Yeah." "Well, they told us out in Rapid City you were going to be coming, so we've been watching for you." So that was Kay and Ken Lindley
Oh my goodness.
and their 4 kids.
So then
So we got to know
Oh my
them.
goodness.
Okay. And so then we became very good friends. He was teaching at South Dakota State. And then, and she had gone to Houghton. Now, I had never heard of Houghton. In fact, I never heard of any Christian schools except 2. I knew there was Bob Jones and there was Wheaton. I thought they were the only 2 Christian liberal arts schools in the whole world. I didn't think there were any others. And so she told us all about Houghton. Houghton was this great place. And so then I decided, well, I guess there's 3 schools. It wasn't actually till I got here that I realized there's all these other
Oh.
Christian schools. I just was unaware of all these ones like Taylor and Roberts and all of those. I've never heard of them. But anyway, we were there for 2 years, and then Houghton wrote to him and said, "We want you to be head of the science division." So he went back to Houghton, and he got there and he realized there was an opening in the math department. So after about a year, he wrote and said, "Well, would you guys consider come out to Houghton and teach?" So, and we were very happy in Brookings. It was really nice people. I really liked Brookings by that time. But we felt the Lord wanted us to come out to Houghton. So we said, yeah, we would do that. Oh, and salaries, now let's see, remember, when I went to Brookings, I think the first year, they gave me maybe $4,500 because, it was the first year. But then the second year, they weren't like, well, if you've been here so many years, you get advanced. Theirs was all on recommendations and so on, and how the students. So I guess I'd gotten really good. So the second year, raised me up to about $6,500 was the salary I got the second year. And the last year I was there, I know I was the highest salaried person for being there that long. That's what they had offered me.
Cool.
But anyway, Houghton offered me $4,000 to come there. So we were back to starting over again.
Oh man.
And I actually heard a detail on your sentence that Ken Lindley had communicated there was an opening there. When I talked to Dick Pocock this about a year ago, and he said to me that they had asked him if he would teach math there, and he was a history guy. And so he agreed to do it, but he had no ability in any of the upper mathematics, but he was basically the mathematician. And so when he heard that Dad was coming, he was like, "Oh, good, finally, a real mathematician's gonna come."
Wow.
I didn't know that. He had no background.
No, he was a
Yeah.
history
Yeah, he
teacher.
was a history teacher.
Man.
Well then, now before we actually got to Houghton then, this is also interesting. There was an advertisement in the Monthly there was the National Science Foundation would give a year-long chance to study at whatever school you wanted to get into, and you get your full wage, and it would be the wage you would get from the school you were at.
Oh, okay.
You know, so they're going to give. Plus, they give you $2,000 in expenses. $2,000 in that time was really low.
Yeah.
All your travel money, and so on. So it was really a lucrative thing. So I thought, well, I'll try out. I doubt if I'll get this because too many people want this kind of a thing. And so we weren't really planning on that ever happening, but send it in and see what happens. And the Lord provided for that, and so we got to go to Cornell for the year before I ever got here. But then at the same time, that same summer, there was another thing in the Math Monthly that they were offering for mathematicians to be in Bowdoin College for this 8-week seminar, and that was really highly endowed, or very good stipend for that. And well, there's no chance I could ever get that, but the Lord was saying, well, why don't you apply for it and see what happens. So I applied for that, and sure enough, we got that one too. So then, when we left Brookings, we had to pack for 3 places. We had to pack for the summer, go to Bowdoin. We had to pack for the next year when we were going to be at Cornell. And then the rest of the stuff we put in boxes and sent it to Houghton, where we would eventually end up. And
We did a lot of packing. I remember sticking my finger on the string so many times.
That was your job?
Yeah.
Well, we had to pack for the trip too, because we were
Man.
gonna camp all the way.
yeah,
Wow. That's
So-
some
And
some
strategic
of our-
packing.
Some of our furniture lived for a year in a house that's not there anymore on campus.
Oh, where the campus center was,
And
right?
was Lori
Down the
born
ways.
yet? Or was it just
Yeah.
the two
What's
boys?
that?
Yeah.
Was Lori born? Or?
no, that was, Steve was still only about 2 years old.
Wait,
No,
she was born in
Lori,
Brookings.
Lori,
Yeah.
oh yeah, Lori was
Good
born.
thing
Yeah.
Lori's not here.
Yeah, she was born in,
Yeah. We'll have to
Brooklyn.
we'll edit
Who,
that
Lori?
out.
yeah.
No, I wanted a detail on, you said that the Math Foundation was letting you study at a school that you really wanted to study at.
Mhm.
What did you want to study at Cornell?
High above That was the thing, it just sounded really fascinating. College, high above Cayuga's waters. And I just thought that
What
would be a
could you want?
fantastic
Also,
place to.
It wasn't a particular topic that you had heard.
No way. That was a song. I love that song.
What about Bowdoin?
Wow.
But Bowdoin was where they had it. I had no idea. what
Bowdoin is the place where we all. No, that was Bowdoin.
what would be. But now the Bowdoin thing, it's another thing how the Lord worked all this out. When I got there, I realized everybody had a PhD except one other guy from Minnesota who was from a little Christian college there. And one day, the guy, the people out in the programs were asking the teaching assistants, you know, well, how many applicants were there, you know, how did you decide? He said, oh, there were over 300 applicants, and almost all of them had a PhD. Whoa, I think an angel came and when they weren't looking, slipped my thing in with the other stack.
Man,
So,
That's cool.
that's amazing.
yeah, there's no way we would have gotten selected for that except something.
But what did you study at
Supernatural.
Bowdoin? What was it?
It was Herstein and his friend. Herstein was a Jewish mathematician who came from Italy. He could speak fluent Italian, Russian, and he taught in Israel, in Hebrew. Just fantastically smart. He had, and I'd have to look it up, but it's certain topics.
Oh, he
In
was
ring
there at the
theory.
college teaching?
No, they asked him there. Bowdoin sponsored.
Yeah, so he was there for
No,
the
he
summer.
was he
Cool.
taught in Chicago. He was out of Chicago University.
Oh, nice.
Oh my
Except
goodness.
Every other year he would spend one semester over in Israel teaching at that, but he wrote all kinds of papers. Number of them he wrote in Russian
Oh my
and
goodness.
published in Russia. He was just fantastically brilliant.
Wow.
And then his friend was with him there too. But yeah, that was a very interesting time and really fun. And you were asking about what happened to that other car?
Yeah.
After we got married, we had this Nash Ram, which was really nice car. I bought it new, and
That's weird.
which wasn't maybe what $1,000 it cost me. And I was working, you know, as a draftsman, so I had the money for it. So I bought that. Well, we were in Rapid City, and I had a chance sometimes on a Saturday to work an extra 4 or 5 hours at this engineering company. But then I wouldn't get to spend it with her, but we just thought, well, for the extra money, I'll do that. This one, I think it was the third Saturday in October, I was able to work from 8 o'clock in the morning till 5 o'clock in the afternoon. You know, you get 8 hours of work, $16 I made for doing that. And although they might have paid me time and a half for overtime, so maybe like $20 I was going to get. So in the morning, I took my car in to have the grease fixed and the oil change and all. And then it was that you greased the cars. Left it off at this place, went over and worked all day. 5 o'clock, I got home, or I got done. I went to the filling station and drove off. I paid the guy, went about a half a block. Bang, 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 bang. And what in the world is going on? So I wheeled it back to the filling station. He says, well, you have a stone in the, whatever the thing that spins around so fast. And he said it tore it all up. It'll cost you $400 or $500 to get this repaired. I said, well, I didn't do anything. It was perfectly fine when I brought it in. You're the guys that had stuff apart, and then you must have got. We wouldn't have done anything like that. It wasn't our fault, you know. It's your fault. So Well, I felt pretty bad at that time. I spent all this time working to make a few more dollars, and this whole thing went so. I got home and I said to Shirley, I think I don't think we can afford to repair this. So I said, I'm just going to ask him how much I can sell it to him for. So they said, oh, I'll give you $800 for it. So I took the $800, and so we didn't have a car
Wow.
after October. And well, by then we had moved to an apartment not too far from where Shirley worked. So
About
she
2
could
blocks.
work over, yeah, so she could walk to work. It's about a mile for me to walk to school, and we'd stop back and we were, and so it wasn't too bad. So we didn't have a car then. And the neat thing about it was when Rob was born then, there was extra expenses. She was in the hospital, I think, almost the whole week, wasn't she?
About 5 days.
About 5 days, because there were complications. And then a part of it, we had to have a special nurse before you that first night you were there. What you call her, your wife? Well, no, you wouldn't. You didn't know anything. You were really, really bad. I thought I'd lost you.
Oh, really?
Yeah, she was, and the lady, Franklin Simpson's wife, she said, I don't know,
that.
I don't know if she'll make it through the night or not.
Really?
She was really, so I was really feeling bad. So I walked home from the hospital to where I lived was about, well, maybe 3 miles. I walked, that was the longest. 3 miles. Well, they told me about 1 o'clock in the morning. They said, well, there isn't anything you can do here. You should just go home and get some sleep. They didn't know I didn't have a car or anything, but and so I walked home and stuff. But all those expenses, well, and then we didn't have any hospital insurance. I didn't have any
Well, we
insurance.
did have one policy, but it just paid the minimum.
Okay, right.
That your folks, your aunt and uncle had bought us one policy. But it just paid whatever the normal
Yeah.
delivery would be.
Maybe for anyway. But for all those days and all that stuff in the hospital got done, and we got the bill, and it was $800. So we traded Rob for the car. So the $800 I got from the car, we gave the hospital. We got to have Rob.
Rob.
Oh, man.
So that was good. And then we didn't drive a car again for a couple of years. Rob was about a year and a half old, I think, before he ever went in the car much at all.
But that was terrifying.
You're a bit of a switch.
So that's what happened in the car.
Man, I kind of want to see what a Nash was. Yeah, I wondered. So I figured probably if the same car, I don't know, would you have been able to fit the whole family and all the gear in that to go back?
I don't know. Well, we didn't have much bigger one then. We had a 2-door Plymouth,
Oh, wow, yeah, that's
which
not
had a big trunk to it, but.
Well, and your folks took stuff in their
Yeah,
car.
and my folks had a car. They had a
Oh,
Dodge.
here we go.
But we left a lot of stuff in the apartment where we'd been living when we moved from there. And we went back, you went back
We were
a
with-
few
we
weeks
went to
later.
Colorado.
Yeah, and a lot of it was still there, but it was just like old bottles of stuff that we didn't bother to do. But the interesting thing was there was a sofa that we'd been sleeping on, a hide-a-bed, and it was still there, but the mattress was gone.
Oh.
Somebody had come in and taken that, but they left a lot of the other stuff. And
trying to think. Does that look about right? Is that too big?
Yeah, that's way too big. It had a slanty roof. It was called
Okay.
a Nash Rambler. Well, that was a Nash Rambler. This was
The
this
hatchback.
Was, yeah, hatchback of a Nash Rambler.
Let's see this.
So
Wow.
that's the
Love it.
story.
Very good. Thank you.
Story. Yeah.
Yeah.